What is something that is definitely physical, definitely emotional, it's economic, but it's overwhelmingly spiritual? It's something that the Word of God, the Bible, mentions over 2,000 times, and it's common to every human being alive. Well, it's the subject of money and how we handle it. We're going to talk about that on this edition of Truth and Liberty. Alex McFarland here with a very special guest. Can't wait for you to meet this person who is incredibly skillful, incredibly wise on the topic of money and assets and our responsibility to God as we handle these things. Christian Briggs, you'll meet him in this edition of Truth and Liberty.
Welcome to the Truth and Liberty Show, where trusted leaders bring biblical insights to important issues to help you stand for truth and effect godly change in our nation and in our world.
How far back can you remember about your interactions with money? Hi, Alex McFarland here. Maybe you got some allowance doing your chores at home. Maybe you cut the grass and your parents paid you for that. And at an early age, like most of us, you learned about earning money, but it's not just earning, it's handling money. And do you know the English Bible uses the word money 140 times, but over 2,000 times, the Bible talks about the way we handle the things God entrusts to us. And we're living in a very unusual time in world history, actually, because there's a push to move away from actual tangible currency to digital currency, cryptocurrency. We hear about non-fungible assets. We'll talk about what that is. But to help us weigh in on this, and every time we have a conversation, it's fantastic. We get so many insights. I learn so much from this individual. It's Christian Briggs. He has, decades of wealth management. He is one of the nation's, maybe the nation's preeminent expert on gold and like rare coins, hard asset management. He regularly serves the U.S. government by giving reports on what's going on in the currencies and economic contexts of the world. And he's a wealth of wisdom. Our guest today on Truth and Liberty, you don't want to miss our conversation with Christian Briggs, and he's with us now. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you because you make me think. And about a week and a half ago, you and I were on a radio show. And you probably couldn't see this, but I had a call computer, and we can take about 6 calls. But I had more than 25 people in the queue, and I got so much feedback of people saying, that guy Christian Briggs, best guest, get him back again whenever you can. But I'm glad to have you on television with us today on Truth and Liberty. And many things I want to ask you, but give us a little bit of your background, Christian, and how God brought you to where you are in your journey.
Well, my background's pretty like everybody else. Just kind of read a lot of books, read things on economics, studied the physics of economics, which was really, I love reading anything on engineering, whether it's aerospace or commercial aviation, love jet engines. I was always interested in how do things work mechanically, and then what's the evolution of these mechanics going to be like in 30 or 40 years. This is obviously many years ago. And as I kind of evolved into all of that, about almost 6 years ago, maybe 5.5, I was researching the crypto market and looking at centralized systems that were going to, at some point, overtake decentralized, which is your Bitcoins, which is your private cryptos. And we were going to go more toward a government-run centralized digital currency. And by doing that, I realized that the Federal Reserve was secretly building a CBDC, a centralized system that would ultimately usurp Congress's approval, brought it to the attention of members of Congress. At that time, Biden was president, and he had signed executive orders to expedite the rollout of CBDCs, or central bank digital currencies. So Elizabeth Warren, as you know, is a big proponent of communist-style agenda, and so she was really pushing to get that done through the Federal Reserve quickly. Trump was fully aware of this. We were creating white papers, having meetings, and as he took second term, we've had a chance to kind of regroup. But unfortunately, Evitability is the theory of chaos, right? Whatever happens was inevitable. So the inevitability is, even just Friday, I saw a article on Bloomberg. I was reading some of the text, turned up the volume, and realized there was a guest on there talking about how the digital dollar is now fast tracking its way, and that Europe is trying to push back on it. So the day of digital currency is here. The question is the bad actors or the good actors, the nefarious things that can be done, and hopefully in 28 we'll still be able to maintain a Republican president.
Christian, let me ask you this. First of all, digital currency, what is it secured by or backed up by?
Well, nothing. I mean, it's an algorithm. It's a piece of code that then gives the perception of value. Bitcoin, just so your listeners and viewers and all the people that you guys talk to can understand, is when Obama took office and he was in his first term, he created the whole crypto market. The market was really not evolved into what we consider to be even first stage. It was really more of a concept. Obama, with the help of CIA, NSA, Mossad, and MI6, and a few other agencies, intelligence agencies, created a system to create value, to condition and program. That's what TV programming is all about, right? CIA built all of that kind of stuff. So what they did was they created this understanding that if we can get people to believe the unbelievable, which the unbelievable is that a little piece of code represents greater value than the tangible asset like gold or silver or even a paper dollar would have more value than these tangible assets, we then can enter a world of digital currency instead of decentralizing systems, which gives you the autonomous and the free-for-all, able to freely move your money around, buy and sell without any government intrusion or surveillance. The governments are now building what they call centralized systems. If you look at 98% of the world today is either in the research or piloting or launch of a centralized currency. And so Obama is the one that conditioned us through Bitcoin by allowing that, and then allowing apps and things of which that would be able to do peer-to-peer transactional capabilities. We are now about a 90% digital environment by the end of this year, early 27. So the programming has worked.
So when you say a central bank digital currency, CBDC, I mean, is it unique to America? And if so, what would make American digital currency better or more trustworthy than, say, China's or something like that?
Well, when you centralize something, you're centralizing the application of power usually. That's why they call centralizing power. That means a handful of people, less than maybe 20, control 300, 400, 500 million people in any country or any continent. And so there is nothing good about a CBDC. There is nothing good about it. It's all completely a communist style, okay? It is a communist method of which they can turn your wallet on and off. What's interesting is the concept of electric vehicles. Electric vehicles are no better than a CBDC. The EVs are built with the understanding that they're going to be more efficient, cost less over time. What's reality is, like China has made clear, EVs were never meant to clean the environment or to be more efficient for traveling. They're meant to be controllable by transportation, right? So a CBDC is the same method. It centralizes the ability to turn off your on and off your money, just like an electric vehicle centralizes the ability. And here in the United States, any car manufactured from 26 on has a cutoff switch, both by federal and state and local governments. So what we're doing is, if they can't get you on an electric vehicle, they're going to get you on even a gas or diesel engine because there's automatic cutoff switches. That's why these older cars have become extremely popular. They don't have all the computer chips and all of the nuances, because we're going to what they call a three-part centralized global world. That is transportation, healthcare, and of course, money. And it'll be all derived through centralization. In America, CBDC there is nothing good about it. And you'll see lots of comments made by members of Congress to that effect.
Yeah, well, it's all about the compromising of our freedom, our autonomy, and certainly our privacy. You know, Christian, when I was in college in the late 80s, there was a lot of talk about smart roads that would control where your car could go. It would be self-driving. That never really materialized. And I remember even way back when I was in college, I thought, I don't know how they'll do that. You know, there's the weather, the elements. But here's the thing, with the wiring of the planet and Wi-Fi, and then, you know, GM had the OnStar program, and there's satellite radio. I mean, the pavement on the street doesn't need to have a metal strip in it to be a smart road. They can control the car from above. And the right IP address, you're right, government or local officials could stop your car, disable your phone. If for various reasons your life could be ground to a halt in a matter of points and clicks, couldn't it?
Sure. The one of the things I'd like to say to people, and I have to really be caution about how I say it because I don't want to be insensitive. The dumbest thing we ever did was to believe that Facebook was an aggregator to reconnect friends. If you want to know the history of this, in 2003, Peter Thiel and Joe Lonsdale, who are the founders of Palantir, graduated Stanford in '03. If you look at '04, as Zuckerberg started Facebook, and then Peter Thiel quickly after that put in 500,000, Palantir is the backbone for data collection and scrubbing to be able to determine all of the surveillance information it needs at its fingertips. When you look at what the administration has currently done with giving massive contracts to Palantir, both at the DHS level, Department of Homeland Security, in the transportation, the CIA, the NSA, Palantir was a CIA-backed company where members of the CIA left, took a platform, an idea, a software engineering platform, about how do we basically know every single thing. Facebook was integrating all of its information, has been caught many times and paid millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in fines for using information on individuals, citizens of both this continent, North America, South America, Europe, Asia, it doesn't matter, and utilizing that in nefarious ways. So if you thought it was free to put your kids on Facebook, their schools, their hobbies, their likes, their dislikes, it was the most disingenuous thing ever made. And it was to aggregate as much information to be able to control people and then to build social credit scores on kids now, so that way they know exactly what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, what their likes and dislikes. And it all is about one thing: centralizing information on individuals. So again, it goes back to the same thing. Why has Facebook become Meta? What is Meta? I'll tell you what Meta is. Meta is basically a globalization name for the metaverse, right? The universe, but in a bigger way, because what it's doing is it's actually giving you the ability to travel. The understanding of what we're going to see here very soon is, one, universal basic income. Now, why universal basic income? Because right now it's determined that within the next 6 to 7 years, 83% of America isn't going to be needed. You don't need the doctors, the lawyers, you don't need the accountants, you don't need the customer service people. Robots and AI systems, which is artificial intelligence software, is already replacing people by the millions, either through direct layoffs or canceling jobs that would have otherwise been. So they're centralizing everything. Trump's doing the best he can to push back, but at some point, it's almost like to get along, you got to go along. And there's a tremendous amount of concern in Congress right now by lots of Republicans that the Democrats are starting to win the battle of the bulge, which is basically pushing the CBDC and all the controlling mechanisms and Palantir's software right on top of us.
You know, U.S. News and World Report annually does an issue on colleges. And I don't mean to get us off track, Christian, but so many American colleges that are going out of business, and they have millions of dollars worth of maintenance because things like, and this is part of what COVID did, kids don't move away to go to college, at least to the degree that they once did. And schools, they used to derive so much revenue from dormitories and cafeteria, and parking stickers. Well, car ownership is down among young adults. They don't want to buy a meal plan. They don't stay in the dorms. They go to school remotely. The brick and mortar colleges, many of which are 150 years old, U.S. News and World Report believes that within the next 5 to 10 years, minimum 50% will close, maybe 2/3. So talk to us, if you would, about the future. People are not going to college the way they once did. In fact, young adult females are many times more likely to graduate from college than young adult males. And I guess my point is, it seems like we're becoming a maybe less educated, less resilient, more easily controllable culture. And the fact that people are just utterly tethered to a mobile device, and that includes the wallet now, we've compromised our autonomy, compromised our privacy. We're easily controlled. Am I seeing it correctly?
Yeah, but we're easily controlled because of convenience. GPS, Syria,
Yeah.
Alexis. If you look at like your systems of which you don't write anymore, you don't do cursive, you don't spell things out, you can use spell check, you can easily adapt to any kind of functionality at your fingertips on a phone, mobile, and then all of a sudden it takes away the brain power. What's interesting, if you go back till about 1980 till through 25, the average, and I don't even want to say this adolescent, but young people in their 20s, because of the adoption they've had with systematically having these things since they were kids in the last, say, 8 to 10 years, their IQs have dropped like a rock, in some cases as much as 20 points, because they don't use the brain power. And what we're doing is we're also utilizing more and more virtual reality, augmented reality. And what's happening is we're leaving the things of which, how many times you see kids riding bicycles in groups of 10 or 20 going from one house to the other house? How many times you see fishing poles on those bikes? Or how do you see footballs or baseballs or basketball? What you're seeing is the revolution of the Great Reset and it's a revolution because you're changing the entire culture, right? It's like from socialist to communist or capitalist to socialist, and that's what we're seeing is what we're building as a society where they have limitations on going anywhere, like transportation. Go try to take a flight somewhere. If you don't have digital ID, that was pretty rare at an airport these days. Even the ones in Europe, digital ID is like sometimes double, okay, what it is here. So the ability to be able to move freely is now becoming not just by a physical state, it's a mind state. Like we're training the kids not to want to do things or not to want to converse in person, because you go to dinner and you see 10 kids at the table, they're all on their phones or iPads. So it's a great reset of not just the culture, but the monetary system, the transportation, and soon healthcare. Healthcare is going to be very limited for people that aren't productive in society, like they do in England and Canada. You're over a certain age and you need some severe or significant medical treatment. You're on that 20-year waiting list, which means you're out to the pasture.
Talk to us about talking about limiting people's mobility. Talk to us about the 15-minute city concept and the urban planning that's going on all around us.
Well, I believe there's about 43 cities now that would fall within that 15-minute city criteria, or certainly by the definitions that have been set. BlackRock is aggressively putting money towards these cities because that's where we're going. You don't need to go anywhere. No cars, maybe some bicycles or something, but otherwise you're walking. If you look at different communities around the United States, Chattanooga, Tennessee built one. West Haven in Tennessee built one. West Haven is a great little community, but really you don't need to leave it. And that's the beauty of it. The climate change nutcases have decided that if we have these cities and they're limited on travel, or at least going anywhere within the context of what your little bubble is, well, then you're seen as somebody who's not following the rules. They'll turn your money off. So 15-minute cities are designed globally. They're building them everywhere. Like I said, I believe there's 43 either built or under some type of development expected to be completed soon. It is to manage human beings. Think about that. You're managing them. It's not a prison in the terms of what four walls and some bars mean, but it is a digital prison. That's what we're coming to. Surveillance on the people to make sure and to ensure compliance.
Christian, I've got to ask this because I'm old school and I'm old or older, and I'm a bit of a contrarian. Whenever I travel, and I used to see this just in airports, but now I'm seeing it in a few retail places. Card only. We do not accept cash. And I was actually in the airport in Philadelphia, and I saw some place that they would accept card or euros, but not U.S. cash. I'm like, how can a business in the United States of America accept euros, but not U.S. currency? Do you envision a day when, ones, fives, and tens, our dollar bills, are no longer circulated in the United States?
Well, it's limited now. I mean, you're talking about the complete elimination of cash. That's 2 to 3 years away. That's all it is. It's just a couple of years. The European Union right now is so anti-America that they have actually, and when you go to Europe, as you know, if you go to England or pretty much anywhere in the European Union across Eastern or Western countries, you're going to have limitations on dollars. What used to be 30, 40 years ago, the acceptance, and I mean, they loved US dollars. They looked at it as being one of the best assets to have. Today, they frown upon it because what we've done is we've alienated a lot of these countries from different trade deals or international policies. Biden was horrible on this stuff. Obama was, well, look at what Clinton did with NAFTA. So when you start to look at all the trade policies or the policies of which would give Europe like sanctions. When we did sanctions on Russia over the Ukrainian war, it was the worst thing that ever happened to the dollar. The dollar became a second-rate citizen, second-class currency. And all of these countries have worked for years and decades to be able to circumvent the dollar. So now Europe doesn't even allow what they call the USTD, which is basically the stable coin, the US dollar, digital dollar stable coin. They don't even let it trade over there in any real quantities. They're not allowing a lot of the localized trades to be able to settle in a digital dollar, the new stable coins, because there's fear that the dollar will not be around in the next 2 to 3 years. And they're probably right, which means they could lose a ton of value on US-based, dollar-based assets.
So let's talk about gold a little bit. We've got a break coming up, and folks, stay tuned. Christian Briggs, our guest. First of all, Christian, your website, please.
It's BMC, Bravo Mary Charlie, Ham. So bmcham.com.
Ham, short for Hard Asset Management, right?
Yeah, our parent company is BMC Capital Inc. It owns Hard Asset Management. And we've been in business. I've been doing this for a little over 40 years now in the precious metals business.
So talk to us about why you think it would be wise for Christians to own gold.
I think it's wise for anybody to own gold. I mean, if you want to put your complete faith into centralization of all power by governments, and we know governments are inherently evil, then you want to own precious metals as a, and I always say this, it's not just a hedge. It's not just a comfort, but it's true wealth. And if you look at some of the values that have been set forth, I mean, look at the dollar. It has no value. It really, I'll give you an example. In 1971, when we left the gold standard, August 15th of 71, within 6 months, the dollar had lost 30% of its buying power. If it was, Kissinger is the one that talked Nixon into it. It was a horrible deal. Then when Kissinger realized, oh my God, the dollar is falling faster than we thought, in 74, he goes out there and says, hey, we better start buying dollars again. So he creates the petrodollar by doing the 50-year contract with OPEC and, obviously big nations that trade in oil. When you look at the buying power of $10,000 back in 1971 to today, that $10,000 has less than $500 in buying power, but $10,000 in gold back then has almost $1.5 million in buying power. So where's the wealth? Where's the true wealth? Having gold or silver under your bed, it's the best thing in town.
So Tell us if there is one, the connection between the severe recession of the mid to late 1970s and our having gone off the gold standard. Is there a connection?
Well, there was. Nixon created the inflation. Poor Carter. I mean, he wasn't a great president. He didn't even know economics 101. God bless him. But he
Yeah,
didn't really cause the inflation. Nixon did. Nixon
yeah,
basically said, I can't print money if I've got to buy gold for every dollar printed, because he was coming into a recession. I mean, 73, 74 was terrible. So when you look at history, he overinflated the printing of dollars because there was no backstopping or recourse. It was like an open-ended checkbook. He didn't have to worry about it. He was trying to get elected again, which obviously he did, to his own demise later, of course. But he did create one of the worst economies since the Great Depression at the time, 50, 60 years later. And we are now looking back at this saying, had we stayed on the dollar back in 1 for 1, the dollar would still have the exact same buying power and gold would be still where it's at, but our dollar would be able to buy whatever we wanted. Today, it doesn't do that. Because why? Because one man was determined to be reelected and he had to inflate. And we've been doing it ever since. We never stopped. We thought, this is great. We can print as much as we want. We can make real estate worth far more than it truly is, because it's real estate in your middle class. It was always meant to stay within a certain percentage of that medium income, like the medium price of a home, where in 1960, a school teacher could actually afford to buy the average price of home.
sure. Yeah,
1979, they couldn't, and they haven't been able to do it since. Think about it.
yeah.
Never. A school teacher today cannot buy a house.
Hey, I'm going to invoke a name from the past. I bet you haven't heard this name in a while. Alan Greenspan.
Mr. Bond King.
Thumbs up, thumbs down. Give us your take on Alan Greenspan.
Oh, Alan Greenspan, was it Diane Sawyer, I think, remember, from 60 Minutes and all that? I think he
I
had
think
a very
you're right.
famous
Yeah.
wife. Yeah. So you know where his liberalism came from, right? Okay, she wasn't exactly far right mega. So Alan Greenspan was, look, there has been no
Chair of the
Fed
Federal
governor.
Reserve.
Yeah, right. The chairman of the Federal Reserve, no Fed governor of his magnitude. It's like Yellen. They all get it wrong. They really do. They don't understand some of the differences between overinflation or overstimulation of economy to create credit. That's what they did. When the chips hit, remember 87? I mean, we had a 36% drop in that one October 19th of 87, I believe, when the Dow dropped 36%. And what do? We either raise rates too fast, too aggressively in a short manner of time, or we're always too late to lower rates. It's always the reactionary. The Federal Reserve has never been really proactive to understand that you're destroying the middle class by continuing to print money. And the Treasury is the one that prints it. The Federal Reserve buys it, and then they put it back into circulation. And every president, I can tell you this, ever since Woodrow Wilson started the IRS and the Treasury Department, and the Federal Reserve, of course, we have been a nation of really socialists, because the policy went from capitalism, small government by the people, to socialism over time, okay, like the Chinese like to say, the long game, to really the president had less power. And so Alan Greenspan, he had bonds. He didn't like equities. So he was never going to be pro-capital. He was more pro, I would say, the top 1% of the leftists. And so people will look back and say, okay, go ahead.
Forgive me, Christian.
Oh.
We got to take a brief break. We're going to come back more and talk about preparing for your financial future, handling money God's way, and looking after yourself and your loved ones. Stay tuned. We're back after this.
Darkness has attacked our nation, but God is raising a standard. Now is the time to wake up and shine the light across America and around the world. Believers are fighting back, eyes are opening, hearts are changing, and Christ is being proclaimed. In government, education, family, media, and the church, we are mobilizing to engage culture with truth. Go to truthandliberty.net.
Welcome back to Truth and Liberty. Alex McFarland here. We're going to resume our conversation with Christian Briggs. In my opinion, just one of the preeminent experts on economy issues and how to prepare from a Christian perspective. But I want to mention truthandliberty.net, the website. We've got articles that we're posting all the time. And there's a pastor's toolkit to equip ministry leaders to speak about moral, social, political, cultural issues from a decidedly biblical perspective. Voters' guides. The midterm elections are coming up, and they're so vitally important for the future of our country, but for your future and all of our futures. And so we want you to be informed, and I would encourage you to tell your friends about Truth and Liberty. Pray for this broadcast, which is national and even international. And if you feel so led, consider supporting. Go to truthandliberty.net/donate. The gospel is free, but it does take resources to deliver that free message. And really, truth, as is always the case, truth is setting people free. And this is empowering lives through truth. And hey, I'm so honored to bring back our guest, because think about this as we segue to a topic I want to address. What is something mentioned in the first book of the Bible and the last book of the Bible? Genesis, Revelation, both mention it, and the Bible itself addresses it 400 times. Gold. That ancient precious metal, gold. It's, oddly enough, something very relevant in the 21st century as well. Well, to tell us more, and we'll glean from his wisdom on a number of topics, it's our guest today, Christian Briggs. Christian, welcome back, and thanks for, you're so gracious with your time. Thanks for making time to be with us on Truth and Liberty.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I got to ask you this, if you would, because I love history, very sentimental. Your firm has acquired some pretty amazing rare coins, hasn't it?
We have. Over the past 40 years, we've been fortunate to handle probably about 75% of the rarest United States, or certainly European and ancient rare coins that at least known today.
Wow. Tell me, how did you come to do that? And when you talk about acquiring gold, it's not just bullion or, gold bricks, but sometimes it's very exceedingly rare first proof coins and things like that too, isn't it?
Well, what we try to do is we have a combination. We have two different parts of the company. We have an area where institutional or large scale purchases on bullion products, gold, silver, platinum, palladium, and rhodium, which obviously is a key in nuclear energy. And as we move forward to energy capacity needs, we recommend those. So we deal with that. And then we have a retail division that also sells those five same precious metals to individuals. And then we have another division where we sell very, and I don't want to say rare, sometimes they're unique. People always say, is everything rare? Yeah, for the most part, a 100-year-old coin is rare by today's standards when you compare it to modern stuff. But we try to select things of which for the long-term 5 and 10-year holding periods, build sets for people, try to really build them diversification in rarities, like look at rare watches or rare cars or rare coins. Some of those things have accelerated in value by 10, 20-fold over the last 20 and 30 years. So it is a hedge, but it's also very rewarding, especially for individuals that share some of their collector passion with their friends and family. I've had clients over the years say, oh, you can't believe this. When I bought this coin 20 years ago from you, I know it's gone up a lot in value, but just showing something like this to my friends and family over the years has been quite the highlight, not just the financial gain, of course. So we recommend both of those two assets in the same class of hard assets. If you're going to be long-term, there's equities, there's bonds, there's real estate, and then there's these type of assets as well that help offset declines in other areas. And it's been very rewarding for 40 years now.
Christian, is there a rule of thumb that you advise people on of the wealth God entrusts to you? Assets, equities, liquid. Could you assign some percentages to those areas?
Well, we're coming into a kind of a weird time. We're going to be going from a culture, a society globally, it's not just domestically, to where we're going to be in a digital world. And the hard assets, I can tell you this, I have contacts at various big auction houses around the world, and they're all saying the same thing just in the last 12, 18 months, how things are really picking up for some of that. So I always try to err on the side of caution. I think 10 to 20% of one's overall investment portfolio to be positioned, properly positioned in these type of hard assets. I look at two things. One, the timetables. What is your time of retirement, or maybe what is your time that you can allocate toward this asset? And if it's 3 to 5 years, that's good. If it's 5 to 10, that's better. Like real estate, it always seems to creep up there in that first 3 to 5 years in value, but that last 5 to 10 seems to be the biggest move. So it's a learning curve on time, a learning curve on which asset may be best for you. But at the end of the day, it is critical that people stay diversified with their long-term portfolios.
hmm Um, so, with the coming cashless world, I mean, how long? Because I mean, I literally know people, very educated, very intelligent people, successful people. They don't trust banks anymore, not completely, and they are hoarding cash. I mean, what is your opinion of hoarding cash?
Well, I mean, cash is a depreciating asset. I mean, obviously, it has liquidity at any time,
A
but
depreciating asset, you say?
yeah, it's a depreciating asset, right? It appreciates only by the value of what you like having it there for. You appreciate it there, but it's a depreciating asset, right? People say, "Oh, I've got cash on hand, I've got all that liquidity." But that liquidity is going down in buying power, okay? And I've said this before. If you're going to hold cash, why not hold gold? You can sell it at your local pawn shop. You can sell it at the jewelry store. I'll bet you within 10 or 20 miles, reasonable, of most Americans, they can sell that and convert that into paper currency. Or hell, it could be Venmo, right? You could say Venmo, you could say, help, I need this money. And they can just, boom, help is on the way. You can Venmo that. You can digitize your gold into that if that's what you want. So you have all of the ability in which to secure liquidity, but at least with gold or silver, platinum, palladium I mean, look the last, 3 years, 4 years, these precious metals have doubled, tripled, quadrupled. And that says something for the overall understanding of I would say the more enlightened people, right? The ones that are understanding that we're in a devaluation of the dollar. In fact, if you look at China and the rest of the world, they've made bets that the dollar will have zero value in 3 years.
Wow. All right, on that note, my wife and I, 28 years ago, we built a house. We bought a 3-acre piece of land. The land was $20,000. The house was 80. $100,000 we're in this house that today is worth $500,000. Now, tell me if I'm right. It's not that the house went up in value so much. It's that the value of the dollar to buy that house exponentially went down. Is that a
Right.
right way to
So,
look at it?
yeah, think about it like this. Look at the money supply, M2 money supply. When you look at, there's about 19 to 20 trillion dollars in our economy right now. There's too much money. There's too much money. When you look at the average house in the top 600 communities in America, which is about 80% of the population, lives within 8 to 10 miles of a coast, whether it's west, Gulf, or east, you're looking at $1+ million for the average price of a house in these communities. You look at the average income, which compared to a 29-fold increase in the last 60 years in housing, 29-fold in 60 years, give or take. And now we're looking at about a 5-fold increase in pay for the middle class. The problem is real estate is exceedingly overvalued because we artificially inflated the economy with cash, cheap cash. So your house doesn't reflect value. It reflects the inconsistency and bad fiscal policy of government. And government is, look, when you get elected to Congress or the White House, or you're appointed in a position by the president or thereof, Your job isn't to really secure national security. You do your job as best you can, but really your job is to stay in office, to get reelected. You'll do whatever it takes. You'll say, you'll do, you will literally decide on that day that I am going to do whatever I've got to do. And if it means inflating the economy with cash, that's what Biden did. He took 4 years and put $11 trillion of unneeded wealth into the economy and blew real estate way up. Because why? Too much money was in too many hands, and people were able to overbid, multiple bids on real estate. Why? Because he had so much cash. So real estate doesn't go up. You made a point, and you're right. It's the value of the dollar loses value. In other words, what was valued at once on Monday is now valued differently a year or two from that.
And by the way, what you say about politicians, the job one is to stay in office. I mean, hence the term career politicians. By the way, I want to thank you so much for all that you do, and I always learn so much listening to you. I want to bounce a statement off of you that I heard many years ago, and I'd love your commentary on it. Money doesn't have value. Money represents value. If that be true, explain, please, Christian.
Yeah. So the money doesn't, it's not the value. The representation is what you can convince somebody else it represents. It's no different than the perception creates a reality. If everybody feels that they're not making enough and bills are getting a little bit bigger, larger, faster, and they feel behind a little bit, that creates a recession, right? It's the mindset of the individuals if they start tightening up. And so when you're looking at what's happening today and the way the dollar doesn't really have as much value in the eyes of the beholder, okay? Whether it's here in the United States or overseas, governments don't believe the dollar has the value. However, if you get enough dollars, value is created. Okay, think about that.
Okay.
What does a dollar represent as a single standalone dollar bill? Okay, whatever, not much, but billions of dollars starts to have value. When you get companies like SpaceX that go public at $1.5, $2, $3 trillion, that tells you right there that the dollar is losing value. In order to get someone to feel like they have value, it's going to take the accumulation of way more. And that's what's happening. The governments around the world aren't in business to create value. They're there for one reason: organize an effective campaign, get elected, stay elected, and then during that period, if they can do some good value, they do it. But otherwise, the dollar doesn't really have any value. It's just perception.
Got to change gears and ask this. How concerned are you about the $39 trillion debt? It's probably even more than that by now. Traditionally, and I'm old enough, I remember when, the debt was under $1 trillion and now it's $39 trillion. Is that the oncoming locomotive that is going to, crash our economy inevitably at some future point?
I don't think the debt's going to be the issue that's going to crash the economy. I think it's going to be what the next generation of politicians in the next 5 years does with all digital. That's what's really going to be the change. And they're not going to allow it a default. What they're doing right now is the Treasury is buying $10 or $20 billion worth of our debt. They're buying the long debt and they're selling the short-term debt on the hopes that interest rates drop. So we pay less money in interest and we have less deficit spending. So really, it's a gamble, right? Trump's gambling the fact that he can increase the dollar usage every day, so there's more dollars in demand, create more, again, of a dollar-based asset global economy rather than gold or silver or the euro. The Chinese are doing just the opposite. They're trying to destroy the U.S. and the financial system by limiting the dollar in demand, because if the usage goes down, it's like anything else. If nobody needs it, nobody wants to pay for it, well, then it's not going to have much value. And so China, the Briggs nations, which is the coalition of about 21 countries for members and partners, are desperately trying to undermine the U.S. financial system. So China and the Briggs, mostly China, wants to become the financial superpower over the next 10 to 20 years. So our debt, as much as I'd like to say it's manageable, it's really not manageable yet. Can it be? I don't think they're going to have to worry about it. I think what they'll do is convert to the digital dollar, remove the debt, give it to the Federal Reserve, let Treasury become the new central bank. This is the theory anyway. What the hope is that Treasury becomes central bank, and it now issues the stable coins. And then the stable coins, or at least grants the permission for individual companies that have a license to issue the stable coins based on a certain metrics of capitalization. And that is really the game, is to remove the Federal Reserve, let it have the debt. Debt goes away. So really, I wouldn't be so much worried about the debt today. I'd be worried about the buying power, because article after article after article, Forbes has said it, no matter what happens, once we convert from paper to digital dollar, there will be a haircut on your wealth. There will be a haircut. You will not get a 1-for-1. It's not going to happen. You're going to have some depreciating pressure to convert. Like any currency that converts, it always has devaluation written all over it. 10%, 50%. Some people say it could be as much as 70%. That's why the precious metals, I mean, rare watches, rare coins, rare cars, I mean, they are an asset that hedges depreciating value of currencies.
Wow. Well, before we leave the subject of the debt, though, if the national debt, if the U.S. debt were diminished or even eradicated, though, wouldn't that make the dollar all the more stable and therefore all the more strong?
Sure, but then you're entering a digital world of centralized currency. So what you're giving up is you're getting your efficiency, you're getting your removal of debt. Government created all this debt, bad government. Every president is liable for printing too much money at a period of time, whether it's been 1 term or 2 terms. Now,
And wasting money.
Yeah, they're wasting money. I mean, at the end of the day, they're wasting money. And so who pays for that? Everybody but the politicians. Everybody but the politicians. So here's what happens. So sure, we can have a stable dollar. You just remember, you're not going to have much. Elon Musk made a really good point a couple of weeks ago, and then he reiterated it last week. And that is, he's found it to be very silly and stupid that people are actually saving money, because in the next 5 or 10 years, they're not going to have any wealth. They'll have nothing, because they'll be on universal basic income, because robotics and AI software is replacing them. So when you say about a stable dollar, you can have the most stable dollar in the world, but if you don't have any dollars, who cares? That's why people are hoarding hard assets, because there's always going to be a buyer of the Mona Lisa. There's always going to be a Picasso that comes up for sale, and wealth will find that painting, that art, that the assets of which bring such great emotional resilience as well as appreciation. So I've said it before. If 83% of America doesn't have a job in the context of what we do now, they're not going to care, as long as their universal basic income is coming every month and it's deposited in a little digital wallet. And the people that own gold and silver and all that could literally become the new millionaires.
My goodness. Let's talk with the time we have left. And by the way, Christian Briggs, our guest today on Truth and Liberty. Website, social media, where can people find you online?
Just 2 places, bmcham.com, toll-free numbers right there, bmcham.com. And on Twitter, I like to call it still Twitter, X, it's at BMC_HAM, BMC_HAM. You can find us there. We publish about 3 or 4 things a week.
Wow. Well, I want to change gears, Christian, with the time we have left. I want to talk about Christians and churches and their benevolent giving. I was on a show in Atlanta, Georgia, and the host was very critical of, quote, the church. So I did a lot of homework, and I was very surprised and pleased to read about the fact that roughly 82 to 85% of all the benevolent giving is done by what, people would call, Christians, people of faith, whether it be missions, soup kitchens, clothes closets, homeless shelters, literacy programs. The Christians of America are the most benevolent people, more than $1 trillion a year in benevolent Christian giving. Now, I know from churches, and I'm in churches like every weekend almost, 2,000 churches I've been very privileged to speak in. It seems like on technology, Christians are what they call late adopters. Online giving, churches, I mean, there are huge churches that don't have online giving capability, and some churches don't have websites. So talk to us about your advice, if you would, because Christians are to tithe. We give 10%. We're to give offerings and more. And Christians are benevolent. One last thing I got to say on this, and I've been a consultant for many churches and schools doing building programs. And lenders love church giving and church capital campaigns because Christians are the group most likely to fulfill a giving pledge. Say a Christian says, okay, I'll give X amount to the building program over the next 5 years. Well, almost 100% of Christians that make a pledge, they do it. So lenders like that. But with the changes on the economic landscape, give us some advice about how Christians can be good stewards, tithers, givers. Do we stay with the old checkbook? Do we give digitally? What's your advice, my friend Christian Briggs?
Well, you can give in many ways. Time, volunteering is also a great way to give if you're limited on some of the financial resources, But I've always said the same thing is to be a great steward of what's given to you, you also have to be great at understanding the markets, or at least where to invest that money as best you can. Because if you grow the wealth, you grow the tithing ability, you grow the amount of tithing that you can give as a dollar amount. So that's why I've always said, if you're a 5, 10, 20-year planner, then you should diversify. That obviously brings in a higher rate of return on average. And then number 3, use a check. I've always said, use a check if you can, because it definitely goes against the whole understanding of trying to box us into this digital slavery that's forthcoming. And that's really what's important right now. So I would say, be good stewards of it by doing long-term diversified investment planning. And number 2, write a check.
Do you know what? I write checks everywhere that will take checks. I'm so old school. Listen to this. I went in Lowe's the other day, the Lowe's Home Improvement, to buy something. And Lowe's takes a check. And so I wrote a check. Now, the cashier was like, I'm going to say 30. It was a guy. He goes, wow, I have never seen one of these. I said, what, a check? And he was like very serious. He goes, well, it's EFT. He said, I have a credit card. He said, I've always heard about checks. I've never actually held one. And I was like, wow, this guy really is, as sociologists say, a digital native. So I'm like a 30-year-old guy, first time he ever saw a check. How do you react to something like that? Because I know he's not alone.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I know kids who guys in their 20s have never seen a check before. Certainly they've never written a check. The explanation is that's the way it is. That's what we're coming to. It's no different than somebody who was on a rotary phone, then a push button phone, and then the first generation of mobile phones. We are evolving at an unprecedented rate. There was a comment made that if you go back from day one through 1970, all the things of which we have known to be evolved and through inventions, and if you take like 1970 through today, we've done more innovating and evolving in technology, as well as adapting and applications for all sorts of things, than 10 times what we basically did from 0 to 1970, almost 2,000 years. So, or at least since Jesus, that's how fast it's moving. But the people of the world, realize this is happening. What they don't realize is that it's all being centralized. These AI data centers, they're not for efficiency. They're all interconnected, and they're to control all the things of which we talked about in the show, from cashless to digital money to digital transportation. Digital transportation is the electric vehicles. And then if you look at the transportation, it's all digital ID. You can't go anywhere without digital ID. So when you start to think about it, AI data centers are basically connecting the digital surveillance and the slavery thereof.
Yeah. Well, we're almost out of time. Fascinating. Give us some homework assignments as we've only got a couple of minutes left, but what would you like to see the call to action be for our viewers today?
Just look at if we go to a digital world and they turn the power off, do you have the resources to be able to circumvent that? Are your stocks local that you can reach out and sell them at a moment's notice? I mean, I think like this, having cash is great. I mean, nothing wrong with that. But I think that once we start to realize what's happening around the world, and certainly here in the United States, as China said, Trump is a great president, but he's not forever. And we hope that another person of his caliber will come in 28, but we don't know that for sure. And so I always like to have insurance, and having some gold and silver at your fingertips somewhere, at least easily accessible. That's just smart business.
Mhm. Do you advocate if someone owns precious metals to have a safe and keep them on site at home or where?
I do. I think that's the most prudent way, because it's likely that a Saturday and Sunday will roll around and you wish you had it, and banks are closed, or at least a lot of banks are closed on Saturdays, certainly Sundays. And accessibility is always the name of the game when it comes to your money. So you can have a nice safe; they're not terribly expensive, and you put it in a place. And as long as you don't share the location or the fact that you even have it, and if you do, don't talk about what's in it, you should be relatively safe and have some peace of mind knowing that it's pretty secure.
Wow. Um, Social media, websites again, and how people can begin to avail themselves to your knowledge and services.
Yeah, it's bmcham.com, and on X it's _BMC or at BMC_HAM on X. We'll deal with Twitter.
Christian Briggs, thank you very much for being with us on Truth and Liberty, and we'll look forward to when you and I can converse again.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much.
God bless you. God bless you. You know, folks, in talking about so many of these trends, I'm not sharing these kinds of things to, make people unnecessarily afraid or create paranoia, but we are to have discernment. The Bible tells us about being as wise as a serpent, but as harmless as a dove. That's Matthew 10:16. And the Bible also tells us that we are stewards. We're not owners. That's why the 4 areas of stewardship: time, talent, treasure, testimony. Time, we all have 168 hours in a week. Talent, you have competencies and abilities and skills God has given to you for not only your own livelihood and looking after yourself and your family, but also for serving the body of Christ. And then treasure. That's money and that's wealth. And look, the decimal point might be in a different place for different people, but the concept is still the same. Like 1 Corinthians 6:19 and 20, that we're not owners, we're managers. We're bought with a price. And that's why, let's say we give our tithe. You have $100, you give $10. Does that mean the $90 is mine? Well, no, that too still belongs to the Lord. And God is so gracious to us. He gives us things we need. If you walk with Jesus, you'll also be entrusted with many things that you want. Matthew 6:33, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these other things will be added unto you. I can tell you, and I'm sure you probably know, how faithful the Lord is. But remember, your time, your abilities, your sustenance, your money, and yes, your influence, those are all matters of stewardship. And God will sustain you in times, the feast or famine, the big times, the lean times. He is our provider. Tell others, please, about Truth and Liberty.
At Truth and Liberty, we're on a mission to educate, unify, and mobilize believers with biblical truth. Our work reaches across the nation, providing leadership, media, and resources. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting an organization, you're joining a movement. With a monthly commitment starting at just $5, you help impact culture for Christ and bring hope to our world. Take action today at truthandliberty.net.